What if a single piece of paper could crush your dreams in seconds? For Emily Dawson, a woman with Down syndrome who saved every penny for months, this wasn't just a bank visit. It was her chance to prove she belonged. But when sneering employees mocked her efforts, her hope turned to humiliation, until a Hollywood legend stepped out of the shadows. What he did next? No one saw it coming. Before we reveal how one voice changed everything, drop a comment with where you were watching from. If you believe in underdog victories stolen back from bullies, smash that subscribe button. Tomorrow's story, even bigger. The morning sun filtered through the windows of Emily Dawson's modest apartment, illuminating the space with gentle golden rays. Despite the simplicity of her home, every corner radiated warmth. Family photos lined the walls, images of vacations from years past, snapshots of her parents at neighborhood gatherings, and pictures of Emily beaming from ear to ear whenever she achieved a personal milestone. Alongside these were colorful sticky notes bearing reminders about bills, appointments, and inspirational quotes Emily loved. To her, each photo and note signified a chapter in the journey that had led her here. That morning felt monumental. After all, Emily had spent the better part of a year saving every extra dollar she could from her job as a server at a local cafe. She'd work double shifts whenever she could, often returning home long after the sun had set. Even when her legs ached and her back felt stiff from hours of standing, she'd quietly remind herself, this is all for my future. She wanted that savings account to prove to the world, and maybe even to herself, that she was fully capable of handling her own finances. The notion that others might doubt her because of her Down syndrome fueled her motivation instead of damping it. Standing in front of her mirror, Emily took a slow, measured breath. She clutched a small notebook in her hands, a notebook she called her success journal. Inside were meticulous steps. Step 1, gather necessary documents. Step 2, fill out the application form. Step 3, double-check name, address, and all official information. She even practiced potential questions the bank staff might ask, writing down her planned responses. She whispered to her reflection, today is the day, Emily. You can do this. You've earned this. A short while later, Emily headed out, the city's bustle greeting her as she exited her building. She found herself nervously fiddling with the folder containing her documents during the bus ride. The ride itself was typically short, but today it felt never-ending. Every stop and start of the bus rattled her nerves further. She reminded herself of the words she'd repeated for weeks. I'm ready. I have everything I need. I will open this account. Upon arriving at the bank, she was met with a chaotic scene. A long line of customers snaked toward the entrance. People sighed heavily, glanced at their watches, and mumbled complaints about the understaffed counters. The tension within the building felt like a coiled spring. Emily clutched her folder tighter, mentally running through her checklist one last time, even when she sensed people glancing in her direction, some with simple curiosity, others with a hint of judgment. She pressed on, determined not to let discomfort derail her plan. Emily patiently joined the line, rehearsing in her head how she'd greet the teller. She'd practiced so many times, a polite hello, a statement of purpose, a confident tone. As she waited, she heard little snippets of the conversations around her. An elderly woman fretting over overdue bills, a young man furiously texting about overdraft fees, and a mother trying to keep her fidgety child quiet. Everyone had their own worries. Emily's just happened to be about proving her capability. When her turn finally arrived, she approached the teller station. The nameplate read Brittany Stanton. Dark circles under Brittany's eyes hinted at her exhaustion, and her mouth was twisted in an expression that suggested she'd rather be anywhere else. Without looking up, Brittany mumbled, "What do you need?" There was no warmth in her tone, just impatience tinged with the exasperation of someone nearing the end of a difficult shift. I'd like to open a savings account, please," Emily said softly but with a hopeful smile. She presented her folder, carefully sliding it over the counter. Brittany sighed, flipping through the documents. A flicker of mild interest lit in her gaze, but it was quickly replaced by an unmistakable boredom. "You filled this out wrong," she snapped, tapping her manicured fingernail on a line of the form. "We can't accept it like this." Emily felt her stomach drop. She'd gone over every word so carefully. But I checked everything. I made sure to follow all the instructions. Well, sweetheart, you didn't do a good enough job, Brittany said, rolling her eyes. Come back with someone who knows how to do this properly. A guardian or something. She shoved the papers back toward Emily. The words stung. Emily's cheeks grew hot, and for a split second she struggled to speak. She had expected some difficulty. Some people always assumed she needed help for the smallest things, but she hadn't anticipated such blatant condescension. She mustered the courage to reply, I am my own guardian. My documents are correct. I followed the guide exactly. Brittany responded with a sneer. Look, I don't have time for this. Let someone else handle it, okay? And just like that, the teller waved her away as if Emily were an inconvenience rather than a customer. The words echoed around the vast hall, catching the attention of others. A heavy silence descended. Emily felt her face flush crimson, and she quickly lowered her gaze. In her peripheral vision, she saw people whispering, some with pity, others with annoyance. She clutched her documents tighter, fighting back tears. Why is this happening? She thought. I did everything right. Brittany, still visibly irritated, pointed to a chair off to the side. Wait there, she said brusquely. Someone will talk to you. Emily nodded, shuffling to the seat, her head throbbing from the humiliation. The hush that lingered around her felt oppressive. She tried to focus on her paperwork to see what might be wrong, but every time she scanned her forms, she confirmed what she already knew. Everything was in order. A few minutes later, a man in a neat gray suit emerged from a door behind the counters. He carried himself with an air of authority and wore a practiced smile. Hello, Miss Dawson. I'm Greg Morgan, the manager here. I understand you're having some issues with opening an account. Emily stood, hugging her documents to her chest. Yes, I want to open a savings account. I made sure to bring everything that was required. Greg motioned toward a table in a quieter corner of the bank. Let's have a quick chat, he suggested, still wearing that polite smile. As they sat down, Emily tried to calm the flutter in her stomach. She explained once again how she'd saved her money from working at the cafe, how she had meticulously filled out the forms, and how she had done everything the bank's website instructed. Greg listened with a patience that initially seemed promising, but soon Emily sensed the same condescending undertone she'd heard from Brittany. His polite exterior masked doubt. Are you sure you're ready to manage a bank account on your own? He asked, leaning back in his chair. Sometimes financial matters can be very complicated. Something in the way he said very complicated made her feel small. She straightened her posture, determined not to let his demeanor shake her. I'm fully capable. I've done my homework, she replied, her voice trembling slightly, but still firm. Greg gave a half-hearted chuckle. It's not about being capable, Eggerly. It's about ensuring all our protocols are followed, especially if there's a need for a legal guardian's signature. But I am my own guardian, Emily repeated, more assertively this time. I'm an adult. I have every right to open a savings account. My documents, my ID, my proof of address, they're all valid. Greg's eyes darted around and his patronizing expression returned. Yes, technically, but it might be best if you brought someone along next time, just to verify everything, he insisted. We want to make sure you fully understand the responsibilities of maintaining a bank account. Emily's temper began to flare. She was proud of her calm demeanor, but each patronizing word chipped away at her composure. Nearby, she caught snippets of onlookers who were now leaning in, curious. Some whispered, why is this so difficult for her? Others made cruel remarks. She probably can't even read those forms. Why bother trying? She tried to shut out the negativity. I've worked really hard for this. I need to open my account today, she said, determined to stand her ground. Greg, looking annoyed, rose from his seat. Wait here, Miss Dawson, he said curtly before heading over to Brittany's station. The two conversed in hushed tones, but not so low that Emily couldn't catch words like unproductive, waste of time, and obvious she can't manage. Her heart sank. Wasn't a bank supposed to help people safeguard their money and build their future? She felt tears threatening to spill again, but held them back. She refused to show weakness, especially when she knew she had done nothing wrong. I won't give up, she told herself. I've come too far. Suddenly, out of the corner of her eye, Emily noticed a customer pointing a phone camera at her. The person muttered something along the lines of, "This is so sad," while clicking away. She felt her cheeks burn at the thought of her humiliation being documented. She glanced down, trying to make herself as small and invisible as possible. Little did she know that the photograph being taken at that exact moment would soon travel far beyond the bank's walls, sparking discussions and drawing attention from those she never expected. Meanwhile, seated inconspicuously at a small desk near the far wall, a man had been observing the entire scene. Dressed in a cap and dark sunglasses, he had managed to remain largely unnoticed. No small feat given his worldwide fame. That man was Keanu Reeves, in the bank for personal business and determined to maintain a low profile. He'd watched Emily from the moment she stepped in. He saw her politely wait her turn, only to be belittled and brushed aside. The condescending remarks she endured, the judging stares from other customers, and the dismissive behavior from the staff, all of it was painfully evident to him. Keanu felt a surge of empathy, mingled with anger, growing within him. As Greg and Brittany belittled Emily from across the bank, Keanu found it increasingly difficult to remain a passive observer. His jaw clenched each time Brittany sneered, or Greg dismissed Emily's legitimacy. Finally, when he heard Greg utter the words, "It's obvious she can't handle it," Keanu decided enough was enough. He set aside his personal documents, removed his sunglasses, and stood up. Emily felt utterly alone, though a few bystanders wore sympathetic expressions. She was on the verge of picking up her folder and leaving, uncertain whether she had the strength to endure more humiliation in a single day. Just then, a voice rang out, a voice that would soon echo in her memory for years to come. "This has gone far enough," said the man, stepping forward. All heads turned in unison to see who had spoken. It was the quiet man wearing a cap, now removing it to reveal none other than Keanu Reeves. A ripple of astonishment traveled through the crowd. Murmurs rose. "Is that? No way. Oh my gosh, it's him." Brittany blinked in surprise, her demeanor shifting instantly. A bead of sweat appeared on her temple. "Sir, I didn't realize." Keanu's expression was calm yet resolute. "You didn't realize what?" he asked, voice steady. "That someone might actually pay attention to how you speak to customers? Or that a person like Emily deserves the same respect anyone else does?" Brittany looked over at Greg, who rushed to the scene, apparently grasping the gravity of having a major celebrity call out their conduct. Greg attempted to defuse the situation. "Mr. Reeves, I assure you there's been a misunderstanding. We have strict protocols." "Protocols," Keanu interrupted softly yet firmly. "I'd love to see the part of your protocols that say, humiliate the customer. Because from the outside, it sure looks like you're discriminating against her." A hush fell over the bank lobby. Keanu held the papers aloft as if they were proof in a courtroom. "Don't patronize us. I heard exactly what you said to her. You assumed she wouldn't be able to handle her finances, purely based on your own biases." Brittany tried to speak but faltered. Greg stepped in, his voice trembling with a forced calmness. "Look, Mr. Reeves, we sincerely apologize for any confusion. Sometimes forms are filled out incorrectly." "Except they aren't incorrect. I see no error here," Keanu said, flipping through the pages. He glanced at Emily, who managed a shaky smile. "Emily has done everything right. Why can't you simply open her account?" Greg inhaled, forcing himself to come across calm and professional, though his twitching fingers betrayed his nervousness. "There's no official policy against opening an account for someone in Emily's situation," he admitted. "Yet you didn't bother verifying her understanding in any meaningful way," Keanu countered. "You just assumed she didn't understand. That is the heart of the issue." At length, Greg cleared his throat. "Let's settle this now." He gestured at Brittany. "Review the documents in front of Mr. Reeves and myself. If everything is in order, we'll open the account immediately." After a few silent minutes, Brittany quietly announced, "Everything checks out. There's no error here." The admission felt heavier than the paper itself, as if each word pointed to her earlier biases. Emily held the paper in her trembling hands. It felt like a trophy, tangible proof of her accomplishment and her victory over every doubt cast her way. "Thank you," she whispered, then turned to Keanu. "And thank you for stepping in when I thought no one believed me." Keanu smiled warmly. "You did most of the work by standing your ground." Never forget that. A ripple of applause flowed through the bank. Customers who had witnessed the confrontation clapped and cheered. Some offered words of gratitude to Keanu for using his influence to shine a light on everyday injustices. Others approached Emily directly, congratulating her on her new account and her resilience. Keanu looked around the bank one last time. "There's a larger lesson here," he said, his calm voice carrying through the hushed space. "We might talk about protocols or policies, but basic respect should never be optional. Every person who walks through these doors, or any doors, deserves dignity. Let today be the spark that changes how you see and serve others." And with that, he turned toward the exit. As Emily stepped outside, she clutched her folder close. The crisp air felt like a balm. She glanced up at the sun, still shining, still bright, and breathed deeply, relishing the sense of triumph coursing through her veins. She had won. Word travels fast, especially when it involves a beloved celebrity like Keanu Reeves. Within hours, whispers about the incident had spread on social media, fueled by the snapshots customers had taken. People worldwide began commenting, sharing their own stories of being dismissed or doubted because of a disability, an accent, advanced age, or simply the staff's impatience. Before the day was over, Emily's phone buzzed nonstop. Messages of support, requests for interviews, and even heartfelt notes from strangers who felt emboldened to stand up for themselves. Though overwhelmed, Emily felt a sense of purpose. She'd always wanted to prove her capability, but now she realized her fight could resonate far beyond her personal life. She responded to a few messages, each time emphasizing that the real victory was not hers alone, but for anyone who'd ever been told you can't. Back at the bank, the regional manager was alerted, and an emergency meeting was scheduled. Greg found himself having to explain in detail the day's events and how they had escalated into a near scandal. Brittany left work that evening shaken, replaying every snide comment she'd hurled at Emily. She couldn't get Keanu's final words out of her mind. Basic respect should never be optional. That sentence echoed each time she recalled her dismissive sweetheart. For the first time, she questioned her own biases. By the next morning, rumors circulated that the corporate office was drafting new training guidelines aimed at ensuring accessibility and respect for all customers. There were quiet talks of expanding staff, so no one felt pressured to rush a customer out the door. For Greg and Brittany, the change might have felt forced, but to the dozens of other employees and to countless future customers, these shifts signaled hope. As for Emily, she woke up the next day in her cozy apartment with the sunlight caressing her face just as it had before. But everything felt different now. She was no longer a woman anxious about whether others would see her as competent. She was a woman who had faced belittlement head-on and walked away with not just a newly opened account, but a newly kindled conviction in her own voice. She found herself thinking about how she could use her experience to help others, maybe by volunteering at community centers or reaching out to advocacy groups that support people with Down syndrome. Whatever path she chose, she knew the sense of triumph she felt that day was just the beginning. That morning she laughed as she sipped her coffee, recalling the surreal moment when she realized the man speaking up for her was Keanu Reeves. She wouldn't blame anyone for thinking she was making it up. But it happened, and it proved a point. Sometimes the most unexpected voices stand up for you when you need it the most. And sometimes you learn that your own voice was strong all along. Before she left for her shift at the cafe, she opened her new banking app and checked the account number assigned to her. A rush of excitement fluttered in her chest. This is real, she thought. I did it. She was already planning out her saving strategy, deciding how much of each paycheck to deposit. Maybe she'd afford a short trip to the beach one day, or perhaps fund a cooking class she'd always wanted to take. The possibilities stretched out before her, illuminated by the simple knowledge that she was in control of her destiny. If you found inspiration in Emily's journey, we have plenty more stories that will warm your heart, remind you of the power in standing up for what's right, and show that empathy can overcome even the toughest obstacles. Click on any of our other stories to see real-life moments of compassion and resilience. And remember, by subscribing, you become part of a community dedicated to sharing hope and spreading awareness about the challenges people face every day. Thank you for watching, and don't forget, tomorrow we have another special story waiting for you. Stay strong, stay hopeful, and never underestimate the difference a single act of kindness can make.